A few decades ago, you couldn't walk past an industrial warehouse, a farm building, or even a suburban house without spotting them spinning on the rooftop. They were everywhere. But drive through any new housing development being built today, and you'll be hard-pressed to find a single one. They go by a few names: turbine ventilators, whirlybirds, but whatever you call them, independent testing has shown they can slash peak attic temperatures by up to 37 degrees Fahrenheit and trim cooling bills by nearly 15%, all without drawing a single watt of electricity or relying on any electronics whatsoever. So if the performance data is that strong, why did they essentially disappear from the modern roofline? And is it time to bring them back? Let's get into it. The desire to move air through a building without consuming energy is as old as architecture itself. We've covered some of these solutions on this channel before. Persian wind catchers known as badgirs, tall masonry towers engineered to funnel desert breezes down into lower levels of a building while pushing hot, stale air up and out through the top. But the Persians weren't alone in this thinking. During the Tang Dynasty, Buddhist monks were designing natural ventilation channels directly into underground cave complexes to manage temperature and air quality without any mechanical input. In medieval Europe, the way a building breathed was considered as fundamental as the breathing of its inhabitants. Air was counted among the 4 essential elements, and its movement through a structure was taken seriously. All of these were passive systems. They depended on building geometry and the behavior of wind to do the work. The shift towards something more active came with the Industrial Revolution, driven by necessity. Deep coal mines needed continuous fresh air to keep workers alive, and the engineering response involved fire-driven ventilation shafts and hand-operated wooden fans. By the 1700s, the Houses of Parliament in London had installed a rudimentary mechanical device called a blowing wheel to cycle foul air out and fresh air in. By the 19th century, engineers like David Boswell Reid were designing steam-powered ventilation systems for hospitals and military barracks where airborne disease made air movement a life-or-death matter. But every one of those systems demanded fuel, infrastructure, and constant upkeep. The real turning point came in 1910 when an engineer named Samuel Ewart patented a rotating cowl that mounted on a rooftop and continuously drew air out of the space beneath it, powered by nothing but the wind. Ewart's original patent described the device as a solution to 2 separate problems: ventilating enclosed spaces and preventing the backdraft that could blow chimney smoke back into a home. What made it revolutionary was the complete absence of any external energy input. No fuel, no electricity, no human labor, just a spinning head sitting at the highest point of the building. And the cleverness of the design isn't found in one principle. It's found in 3, all working in concert to solve a problem that quietly affects almost every home in America. Every summer, solar radiation beats down on your roof surface and turns the attic into a heat trap. Temperatures in that space can push past 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That stored heat doesn't just sit in the attic. It radiates downward through your ceiling and into the living space below, forcing your air conditioning system to work harder, run longer, and burn more electricity. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, each degree of attic temperature increase can raise your cooling load by as much as 4%. Making things worse, in many homes the ductwork that delivers cooled air runs right through that superheated attic space. The air starts warming up before it even reaches the rooms it's supposed to cool. The entire point of attic ventilation is to break that cycle, move the heat out before it has a chance to transfer downward. That's precisely what the turbine ventilator was designed to do. The first is Bernoulli's principle. As wind flows across the curved vanes of the turbine head, it's forced to accelerate. When airflow accelerates, pressure drops. That pressure drop creates a suction effect inside the turbine, actively pulling warm air upward from the attic and sending it outside. Unlike a static vent that simply waits for air to drift out passively, the turbine uses the kinetic energy of the wind to extract air from the building. The stronger the wind, the harder the turbine works. The second is the stack effect. Here's what surprises most people. The turbine doesn't stop working when the wind drops to nothing. Warm air is less dense than cool air and naturally wants to rise. In a home with soffit vents at the eaves and a turbine at the ridge, That buoyancy creates a gentle pressure gradient that keeps driving air upward and out, even when the turbine isn't actively spinning. The third is the Venturi effect. As air is squeezed through the narrow channels between the spinning vanes, its velocity increases further, dropping pressure inside the turbine housing and accelerating the exhaust cycle even more. These three effects don't just add together, they amplify each other. The result is a device that maintains continuous negative pressure at the highest point of your roof, pulling hot, humid, stale air out of the attic while cooler air is drawn in through the soffits below. The performance numbers are real. Research conducted by the Air Infiltration and Ventilation Center found that turbine ventilators increased attic ventilation rates by an average of 15% across a full year, with peak improvements reaching 50% when wind hit the unit from its optimal direction. Temperature data gathered in the San Diego region showed that a properly installed turbine system reduced peak attic temperatures by as much as 37 degrees Fahrenheit, translating directly into an average energy bill reduction of 14.6%. In practical terms, a standard 12-inch turbine moves between 250 and 350 cubic feet of air per minute at just 5 miles per hour of wind. Step up to a 14-inch unit, and that figure climbs to between 350 and 500 cubic feet per minute. Since the device draws zero electricity, every dollar saved on cooling is a net gain. There's no operating cost to subtract. The numbers look impressive, but there are important caveats. And understanding those caveats explains exactly why turbine ventilators gradually vanished from the American housing landscape. Performance limitations. A study from Deakin University found that while a single 12-inch turbine could achieve roughly 150 cubic feet per minute of airflow, the resulting air velocity inside the roof space amounted to only about 1/3 of a foot per second. In ventilation terms, that's classified as still air. The conclusion: a single turbine is frequently underpowered for the thermal demands of a modern home. Most building codes call for 1 square foot of ventilation area per 300 square feet of attic space, but professionals in hot, humid climates like Florida or Texas typically recommend doubling that ratio. Sizing matters enormously, and it's easy to get wrong. Mechanical failure. The turbine's rotating head is both its defining feature and its greatest vulnerability. Ball bearings inside the unit degrade over time when exposed to moisture and dust, especially if lubrication is neglected. As they wear, they produce a squeaking or grinding sound that travels through the roof structure and becomes audible inside the home. Cheaply made units are particularly susceptible, and over years of widespread use, the turbine earned a reputation as noisy, unreliable hardware, a reputation that stuck even as higher quality versions became available. Short-circuiting. There's a subtle but serious installation error that catches many homeowners off guard. If a turbine ventilator and a ridge vent are installed on the same roof over a shared attic space, the turbine's more aggressive suction can actually reverse the airflow at the ridge vent, pulling outside air, rain, and moisture in through the vent instead of exhausting warm air out. Most roofing professionals now recommend choosing one exhaust strategy and committing to it. Because ridge vents are simpler to install, the turbine typically loses that comparison. Appearance. In the American residential market, curb appeal has an outsized influence on purchasing decisions and property values. Turbine ventilators are highly visible from the street. Multiple spinning metal heads on a roofline make an unmistakable visual statement. Ridge vents, by contrast, are shingled over and effectively invisible from ground level. Homeowners associations across the country have restricted or banned turbine ventilators outright, citing the disruption they cause to uniform rooflines. Even in states like Florida, where laws protect energy-saving devices, many associations have found workarounds, restricting turbines to rear roof slopes only, which may place them entirely out of alignment with prevailing winds and gut their effectiveness. Regulatory pressure. As American homes have become progressively more airtight and energy efficient, building codes like the International Energy Conservation Code and California's Title 24 have increasingly mandated mechanical ventilation systems capable of delivering guaranteed, measurable air exchange rates. A passive turbine's output depends on wind speed and temperature differential, variables that no one controls, which puts it in a regulatory gray zone. In a code environment built around certifiable, consistent performance metrics, passive systems face a structural disadvantage. The honest answer is, it depends where you live and what problem you're actually trying to solve. If you're in a hot, windy region, the Gulf Coast, the American Southwest, the broader Sun Belt, a turbine ventilator is still one of the most cost-effective ways to reduce your cooling load available. A single 12-inch unit runs between $20 and $100 in materials. Professional installation typically adds $100 to $300 per unit depending on roof pitch. For a standard 1,500 square foot attic, 2 units is generally sufficient. In a southern climate, energy savings alone can recover the installation cost within 3 to 5 years. As a bonus, proper attic ventilation prevents shingles from overheating and stops moisture from accumulating in the roof deck, extending your roof's lifespan in the process. In cold climates, the calculus shifts. Winter moisture can freeze the vanes solid, shutting the system down during the season when attic moisture management matters most. And in modern high-performance homes with sealed envelopes and dedicated mechanical ventilation, adding an uncontrolled passive exhaust point can destabilize the pressure balance the system was engineered to maintain. For most homeowners who are re-roofing or building new, a continuous ridge vent is probably the more practical solution. A full-length ridge vent spanning a standard roof delivers over 900 square inches of net-free ventilation area, roughly twice what 3 14-inch turbines would provide. The ventilation is distributed evenly along the entire ridge instead of being concentrated at 2 or 3 points, which eliminates the dead air zones that localized turbines can leave in attic corners. No moving parts means no bearing wear, no noise issues, and no conflict with your HOA. It installs once and functions indefinitely with zero maintenance. The turbine ventilator wasn't abandoned because it failed. It was sidelined by a combination of aesthetic preferences, installation complexity, regulatory frameworks built around mechanical systems, and a building industry that favors simplicity over sophistication. The physics behind it still works exactly the same as it did in 1910. Whether it's right for your home depends on your climate, your roof design, and your goals. But the engineering is sound, and in the right conditions, the performance is hard to argue with. If this kind of passive energy thinking interests you and you want to take it further, the same principles of thermal buoyancy can be used to cool an entire home without any electricity at all. That's exactly what the solar chimney does, and we've covered it in full detail right here.